Hi, my name is Debbie, and I am obsessed with all things to do with ultrasound. I'm an empty nester who has spent the last 28 years scanning in all different kinds of situations: clinics, hospitals, point of service, emergency departments, private offices, echo, vascular, general, high risk OB, and want to dive down deep into all things to do with technology, techniques, and transformation. It's time we take ultrasound to the next level. Think of this like your little power boost on your commute to all things ultrasound, along your way to the thing that we call work. So pull up a seat, make sure you're comfy, and be ready to be challenged and encouraged as we learn it's all about the frequency. Jim, thank you for joining us today to talk about some topics that are really important to our society as ultrasound technologists. I appreciate your time and your continual giving, even after in retirement days. I really appreciate that.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Yeah, so I think our first topic we're going to try to tackle today is early retirement in the sonography community. Jim was posted an article, or it was published an article in January, February of 2025 in the SDMS Journal of Diagnostic Medical Sonography that I ran across, and I thought, oh, he would be a good person to talk to in regard to this, because as I'm getting closer to the age of doing that, I thought, what would my future look like? And or how can it look? Or how do I want to create that? And what do I want to leave the community with? Right. I think that's an important question to ask as well, because sometimes we just, clock in and clock out, do our usual 9 to 5, but being able to leave some kind of legacy. And we've been so fortunate to have so many people in the SDMS community who have been willing to leave a legacy and give training and mentorship to many of us and help us to have really successful careers. So thank you for still continuing to do that in your retirement age.
My pleasure. I enjoy doing it.
So tell us a little about your background
Well,
with SDMS, ARDMS.
specifically with SDMS, I was active for many years on the board of directors of the SDMS Educational Foundation, was a frequent presenter at the annual and regional meetings. For probably 30 years, I was involved with them. I was honored to be elevated to fellow status in 1997. And then I think it was in 2017, I was given the Joan Baker Pioneer Award, which again is a great honor, but to me, that just means I'm an old guy and I've been doing this for a long time. And then another privilege was,
Our small token of saying thank you for
yeah,
sticking
I got
with
a little
us.
a little glass plaque that's up there on the
Yeah,
shelf.
that's
I
right.
should put it on this shelf up here, but another honor was in 2019, I delivered the Stephen McLaughlin Memorial Lecture at SDMS Annual Conference. It's a prestigious professional accolade. It was in memory of Steve McLaughlin, who was a pioneer of professionalism in the community. And I knew Steve, and so I was actually asked to give that. And the topic was professionalism. So that was in 2019. And so I've been active in mostly SDMS. I was involved with SVU for a number of years as well. Not as active, but on their editorial board. I've served on the JDMS editorial board, still do. So being involved with a number of different professional activities it's been fun. It's exciting. And for those who are listening, it's a great way to grow professionally, increase your network, meet people from around the country and sometimes around the world, to really contribute to opportunities that sonographers can encounter. So it's I guess I'm putting a plug in for getting active in the professional societies.
Absolutely. I highly encourage that too. And I think the one thing that really drew me to this profession is that we're always collaborating and we're always growing, right? There's always something new to learn. There's always a subject to go deeper in. And so everybody has their specialty. And I've been able to have a few of those people on the podcast for a guest. And it takes a whole slew of us. It takes all of us to make our profession what it is. And so I'm grateful that they have specialties in their areas that they are willing to share with us and allow us to use them as resources for us to grow. I know ARDMS put out a survey in regard to retirement and ask you to interpret those numbers.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. Well, actually, yes, ARDMS and its parent company called Intelios conducted a survey. I believe it was in 2024, probably 2023 to 2024, on sonographer retirement, both on average age of retirement of sonographers, and then how many years the sonographer had under his or her belt at the point of retirement. And they generated a lot of data and charts that perhaps I can share with you in just a minute here that they didn't really know what to do with. So the editor of the journal Diagnostic Medical Sonography, Kevin Evans, who he and I go way back together, called me up and said, Jim, can you make some sense out of this and maybe write a piece to share with the sonography community how the data that's acquired and the trends we're seeing can impact the profession as we move forward through the next decade, and how that really impacts the individual sonographer. And then as this large group of experienced people are leaving, maybe they can still contribute something, even in their retirement.
Yes, that's awesome. Yeah, I think it's important to have a short term, a short game and a long game, right?
Mhm.
So regardless of when you're coming into our community as an ultrasound sonographer, um, to kind of keep the end in mind sometimes, right?
Mhm.
So, um, I noticed that men typically retire at 64 and women at 62 is what some of that data showed. Um, what else did that data kind of bring about for information for you?
Well, in terms of average age of retirement, you're absolutely right. Men stick it out a little bit longer than women do, if you want to put it that way. But I think the other important thing in terms of this data is comparing it to the general population, which is what I did in the editorial. And what it showed is that sonographers, male and female, are retiring at an earlier age than people in the general population. There are all kinds of, there's myriad factors and for that. But again, back to what it means for us is that if our colleagues are leaving at an earlier age, it leaves a gap in workforce. And again, something kind of going off here a little bit, but the reason that's important is that when you look at the trends in workforce, the power of the workforce, how many people, the supply demand, the demand for sonographic services versus the supply of qualified individuals who can provide those services, there's quite a mismatch. And the conclusion or the suggestion I made in the article was, gee whiz, if we're losing a lot of experienced people and they're retiring at an earlier age with more years of experience under the belt, again, that gap may provide some, it may cause some, will, and it already is, providing a shortage of qualified sonographers to provide, again, qualified sonographic services. So I think that's kind of the takeaway there is like, there aren't going to be as many qualified sonographers to do the studies that need to be done as we move through the next decade.
Yeah, I agree. And that's a bit of a concern, right? Because I think there's a large, I think also, there's a large amount of medical imaging that is done by ultrasound, right? So I think you quoted what, 45% of imaging services are ultrasound.
Exactly.
And so with that, like no one goes to the doctor without getting some kind of imaging recommendation, right? To figure things out, right? So I think that's super important to keep in mind as we're moving forward through this, and how can we better equip everyone to uh, be qualified, right? There's so many, I don't know, when I came in and I had 2 years of experience, that's quite a bit different than 15 or 20 years of experience, right? And how can we pass that down?
And another finding or conclusion that I made was, although this data surveyed the sonography community generally, I think it could be extrapolated to the sonography education community. Because again, if we're talking ultimately a shortage of personnel, of staff, well, how do you address that? Well, maybe you convince them not to retire as early, which isn't going to happen, or
Right.
you increase the supply, which is done through sonography education. And so if you extrapolate this data to sonography educators, the same thing's happening as you get teachers like myself who've been teaching for 37 years, and educators are retiring at an earlier age. That's leaving a gap in experienced educators to continue to staff accredited and some non-accredited programs to increase the supply of sonographers. So I think that's the other take on this is kind of the conundrum is that supply is diminishing. How do you increase the supply? Well, you do it through education. And if you don't have the supply of educators, it's difficult to increase the supply of practitioners. So that was the other, I think, economic aspect of the data that we analyzed.
Yeah, and I see this across the board, right? We've talked about in previous podcasts too, building to the advanced practice sonographer, right?
Mhm.
And I've been to many different departments and kind of recommended that position to be created, and yet their words to me are, well, we'd love to have a mid-level provider ultrasound tech, but we don't have enough Indians, right? We don't have enough sonographers to even
Exactly.
create that position.
Exactly.
So I think, like you said, it's what comes first, the chicken or the egg, right? We've
Mhm.
got to be able to really attract people to this profession in order to build it as
Mhm.
a profession and to supply the demand, like you said.
Well, and another little piece of that, and it gets into the, as we said in the data I cited, I think it was 45% of all imaging studies were ultrasound or sonographic types of studies. That's 45% based on prior studies. And that's just in the medical imaging department. That's
Right,
not in vascular lab, that's not in maternal fetal medicine, that's not in cardiology, that's just in radiology.
right,
And so, however, what's happening on the other side is that ultrasound capabilities are increasing. There are new modalities, there are new applications, there are increased, particularly in the world of cardiac and vascular ultrasound, as well as in obstetrics, some of the three-dimensional artificial intelligence is coming into play.
correct.
So as the capabilities of doing new and perhaps bigger, better studies, the number of studies are going to continue to increase, exacerbating that lack of personnel to supply the lack of supply personnel. So it's going to be interesting what happens in the next decade with, again, increasing demand, both through just traditional, conventional ordering, new applications and capabilities, and then again, a diminishing supply of capable people.
Yeah, that's kind of a scary thought when you sit back and think about it for a while. But so many of the reasons for retirement are, overworked or, right? Like
We
um
know, right? We know, we've been there.
yes, we do. Like there's more and more put on to us. I was at a job and they sent out an email and they're like, okay, we want these 10 more images to be taken for every exam.
Hmm. Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I said, interesting, right? Because, and I've said this for a long time, technology's grown, and so we can see so much more, but we don't get any more time to view those things, right?
Right, right,
So 10 more images, but you don't get any more time
right, right, right.
to image those. So what do you think happens to the quality? Like I don't know how they reason that out higher than us,
Right.
and
Well,
maybe they don't.
that's another
That's
that's another
another issue,
topic,
right?
right? Management is consideration, and I totally agree. And I mean, I've been out of clinical for a number of years, but when that happens, then not only do you have to spend more time per exam, and I've been in situations where they up the number of exams they expect you to do each day. Uh,
Yes. Right.
Whereas maybe in an 8 hour day, perhaps 10, 12 studies, depending on the specialty, it
Right.
suddenly becomes 15,
Right.
18, creeps up to 20.
Right.
Management, I'm not dissing management, I've been there myself, but needs to, maintain diminished wait time, manage wait times for patient scheduling, and
Right.
adequate throughput for the department. And the Indians, as you say,
Right.
are going on the warpath.
Right. Yeah, there's always that balancing of um what we can get done, what's healthy for us to get done,
Right,
right? I
right,
think
right, right, right.
ARDMS put out, was it ARDMS that put out or a study in 2023 that gave some guidelines for the length of time and how many exams per sonographer. But if
Right.
there's a shortage of sonographers, then, you know, how do you get all the work done, right?
Right. And I think that
So,
speaks too to some of the reasons that I discovered in investigating why healthcare in general, but sonography and imaging in particular, what's causing the early retirement. And of course, it's the overwork, it's the burnout. It's actually workplace harassment is one of the stated.
yeah, I wanted you to expand on that a little bit. What has been your experience with that? And
Well, I don't know. I maybe I've been fortunate that I mean, I've been in some dicey workspaces in my many years. I couldn't identify any specific incidents of harassment. certainly, there's always that one person you work with who's just not pleasant to work with.
Right.
The person that's always got a negative attitude or is always complaining. I mean, I personally haven't encountered, frank harassment in my experience, but that's cited in the literature, along with people going to part-time, the reduction in people who are full-time saying, you know what? I don't want to retire, I don't want to quit, but I'm gonna drop down to 20 hours a week
Right.
or to part-time status. Um,
Yeah, or just bullying, you had mentioned harassment or bullying. And, as a traveling sonographer at the present moment in time in my career, um, I've certainly experienced that on different
mhm,
levels,
mhm,
right?
yeah, yeah.
So um it's
No, I agree.
interesting.
I've seen bullying. I've seen, again, in particular, I've been a long time educator and in clinical programs, seeing students bullied, seeing
Yes,
seeing newbies or new entrants,
right,
bright and fresh, you want to do it, being threatened, I think, because maybe they're a little bit more on top of things, being threatened or threatening the old timers or the
right,
the entrenched sonographers who's been there for 20 years, who doesn't want to change and doesn't want to do anything new and doesn't want to add additional 10 images, will bully, will and maybe even sort of passive aggressively. But I've seen that. I've seen that in labs, certainly.
yeah. So that's just another area to kind of work on, right, in our environment. I think I've also been a part of a place that required a high number of exams to be done. And I think it was because they had so much negativism in the department previously that they figured, well, we'll just keep them working so that they don't have time to talk to
Don't have,
everybody and
can't
be negative,
complain, right?
right?
No time to complain.
So, pick your poison, I guess, a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think
So all these things are again cited in the literature as reasons for sonographers opting for an early retirement. And I mean, who can blame them? I
right,
mean, I certainly can't blame them. And the other side of that coin is that um, retiring earlier is more financially feasible these days. Many people have an IRA, they have some kind of a pension plan set up, they have plan for retirement. Social Security is if you've made decent wages all your life, as most stenographers do, Social Security benefits are not bad.
right,
Healthcare, again, you get into of course, you need to be retirement age, you get into Medicare or to Cobra over. So the positive aspects of retiring and getting the heck out of that environment are very, very attractive to a lot of people. So that's the other side of the coin. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm tired of the overwork. I'm tired of the bullying. I'm tired of the overworked, overloaded day. And my gosh, I don't have to do that anymore because
right,
having done that, it's a nice perk. It's a real benefit, I think, of maybe just living in our society, our economy, in our world,
right,
that we don't have to work till we're 75 or 80.
right.
We can spend
Absolutely.
the last 20 or how many ever years God gives us of our life, enjoying it.
Right. Right. Yeah, when the benefits outweigh the, you
Yeah,
know, the grind,
absolutely.
for lack of a
Absolutely.
better word.
Absolutely.
Also, I think COVID-19, I think you
Ah,
mentioned that as well.
yes.
That was a big push for people to say, I'm out.
Yeah.
Even on a physician level, I've just seen so many physicians like, okay, well, not gonna push it, don't care, like we're just so over it.
Well, and
Uh,
I think too, another profession that really suffered was the nursing profession, secondary to COVID. And I
Yes.
didn't do any research on the statistics, but I do know that the shortage of registered nurses right now across the country is severe
Yes.
because so many of these great men and women who, nurses are overall, they're pretty dedicated, hardworking
Absolutely.
people, just burn out.
Yes. Yeah.
And the same thing happened in radiology, and that's one of the factors in sonography, but it really impacted the healthcare providers significantly.
Yeah, I think that was a big shift. And I do think that that was a big time of people making some really big decisions in their life, like
Yeah.
I'm finding something else, you know,
Yeah.
jumping ship, even going to a totally new and different thing for them.
Mhm.
But what I was really excited about and was that you really talked about opportunities after retirement. And so I I'm excited about that just because when you get so much experience, it's nice to have someone to go to like, hey, I'm running into this issue or this, what do you think? Or someone to reach out to just kind of mentor you through that
Mhm.
and help you along or just build connections, right? Networking is huge. And I know you've given me some names that help me to connect with other people. And I've done the same with other people. I know when I worked in an OBGYN office, somebody came in and needed a vascular tech, and I knew somebody, and I don't know if this will work, but here you go. And it ended up working. It was just, it's great to um, be able to connect with people to take you to the next level.
Mhm.
And so great ways to still contribute to your profession and help that profession along the way. So I think you're a fine example of that, right? Because you are now retired, you're still writing for the SDMS and still contributing, being guest on podcast, mentoring educators with your new book. Let's not overlook the fact that you published a book that came out, was it last year?
Last January 2024, right?
Yeah. And so I'm excited to get that and to read through that. And what a great contribution, because we can talk about that a little bit too if you'd like. But um, I think with telesonography, where some of our colleagues are working from home to review images
Mhm.
and type up,
Mhm.
I think retirement might even be maybe extend for a while if those are possibilities. So I think there's definitely room to stay in the profession a little bit longer nowadays with where our profession's going. So,
Mhm. I agree. And I think I identified three particular venues, general venues where sonographers can continue rather easily to contribute. One is through educational institutions, through schools. The other is through the professional societies, ARDMS, SDMS, SVU, ASC, and then as a consultant, which I didn't get into much in my article, but that's something that I've done. But I think schools, sonography schools. I think I mentioned my article, volunteering to go into a scan lab just to be an added value partner, not a paid partner.
right,
Although that's another opportunity. Sometimes there's part-time work available to go in and just hands-on with students,
right,
um, mentoring students, participating in class projects, going over case reviews, a lot of opportunities in the educational environment to work with to continue to contribute to the profession. And I think again, as a consultant, if it, for retiring educators, there's a great opportunity in consulting. I'm teaching a couple of courses. We'll be teaching this year at a school virtually, fortunately with virtual realities, but retired educators can help teach a class or develop a curriculum or develop a course. So I think, educational institutions would, ones I've been associated, and I've been associated with quite a few in my career, would love to have somebody that's got 30, 40 years under their belt to just come in on a Tuesday afternoon scan lab and just, take their hand and help out.
right.
So I think educational institutions are a great venue possibility for continuing to contribute. And I think that professional societies too, ARDMS is always looking for volunteers to do item writing or to
Right.
join a committee, to participate with SDMS, SVU. They're always, you know, way open to people, especially experienced people, to jump in and sit on a committee or to do to help out with a meeting or to present at a meeting, to do something and to give back to the professional societies. I think that's another opportunity.
Yeah, I think there's multiple opportunities. I think it's wonderful. And when you're retired, you get to pick and choose the time and place, and
Absolutely.
right,
Right.
you're the boss of life now.
Right.
And so you still get to contribute, but on your terms, right?
Right.
And I love that. I love that we don't have to have these people kind of just go missing in action, right? They
Right.
contributed
Right.
so much
Right.
that they're a valuable piece of our community, you know,
Great. Great.
and
It doesn't always have to be 100% volunteer. I mean, I think it is,
right,
and certainly I've done a lot of that myself, and you don't get paid for a lot of things. But on the other hand, I mean, sometimes there is reimbursement
right,
to work 8 hours again at a school, coming in to do a lab or to do a little consulting for an MFM practice or a vascular practice, to just be there to as a consultant. So there's an opportunity as well for a little bit of pocket money.
yeah. I think sometimes it starts out with volunteering, right? Like, I'm
Right.
a
Oh
little
yeah.
curious about this, and I'm willing to give this a try, and you volunteer, and then maybe it works into a paid position, right? So I think don't shy away from the volunteer work,
Agreed. Agreed. Agreed.
because I
In
think
fact,
it opens up many possibilities for a lot of different.
my entire career as an educator for almost 40 years began as a volunteer instructor at a local community college. I went down one night a week and taught a course in OB ultrasound.
Yeah,
Then I kind of expanded and expanded and expanded, and before you know it, I'm on the faculty. So
right.
I totally agree. Volunteer is a good entree into a lot of opportunities.
Well, and it gives you a chance to figure out, hey, do I really like this as a part of my profession, right? So I think volunteering is huge in a lot of different aspects of life, not just professional.
Oh, right, right. Well,
Right.
there is a feel good about it too, that feel good aspect of participating and helping and doing something good for the community or for others. It's just that innate humanness in us that it feels good to do something good.
Yes, yes, and to contribute. Well,
Yeah,
thank you so much for your time, Jim, and your
my pleasure.
contribution again. I hope that people will listen to this and it will inspire you to find something to volunteer or something to be a part of. Sometimes it's just a local chapter, there's many states who have just local chapters or starting to create a local chapter somewhere. And so sometimes the volunteer is just even on a local level, not even SDMS or ARDMS, although those
Absolutely,
are definitely places that you can go to volunteer.
absolutely.
So just being a part of the community to give back is an important part of growth, I think, for all humans.
I agree. That's right.
So thank you very much, Jim. I appreciate it so
Thank
much.
you, Debbie. Been a pleasure.
Thank you for tuning in to It's All About the Frequency podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Share it with a friend, and remember to keep your frequency high.